All right, welcome to the second part of our workflow. So far we've covered, the modeling was already provided as bonus videos for those of you that want to watch the modeling process. So that's already done. We've also covered the decimation process, and basically all we're left with is automation and triangulation. Once again, the acronym I've coined is called MAD-T. It's really easy to remember: modeling, automation, decimation, and triangulation. So we've already done the decimation, and we're just going to hop to the automation portion, because what we can do with our UVs is we can automate them. You know, I see way too many tutorials out there that are just doing, in my opinion, UVs the long way. And there's really no need to overcomplicate UVs. People think there's some tricky thing. People are like, oh, do I need to retopologize to unwrap? Do I need to do this? Do I need to do that? The answer is no. UVs should be one of the easiest things you do in your unwrapping process, and I'm going to show you exactly how to do it. So UVs in hard surface modeling are different than organic models, because hard surface models have very sharp defined edges, which means we can select sharp angles and mark the seams there. That's actually exactly the process you want to take. Whenever you're unwrapping a hard surface model, you want to put the seams on the hard edges. So generally what I do is this. I like to do one piece at a time just to make sure I have it as clean as possible. So generally what I'm doing, let me turn on screencast keys, is I'll just select a piece. Let's do this one for example. I'll tab into edge mode, and this is the same process for any hard surface model, guys. You could do this on your own models if you want as well. You're going to go into edge mode, you're going to go up here to select, and then select the sharp edges, and you're going to see it selected all the sharp edges based on this 30-degree angle threshold. This is what I always keep it at. I don't go higher, I don't go lower. If I need to add in additional seams in areas that were not caught by this angle, I can do that manually. And this is why I call this part the automation process. Reason being is because you can automate this by using that select sharp edges feature, and then simply press Ctrl E, mark seam. See that? So it's really easy, because at this point all you have to do is unwrap your model. Now, of course, we want to be able to see what that unwrap looks like, so what I prefer to do first is add a new material. I don't know why Blender froze there. Just going to type in UVs, and then we're going to drag out a panel over here, go to the shader editor, and this part's easy. We're just going to press Shift A, texture, image texture here. We'll do new, and you could do 2K or 4K textures, doesn't really matter. That's kind of up to you. I'll just make this 2K. We'll just name it UVs for clarification, and make sure you change the generated type over to UV grid. And now if you just connect the color up to the base color, whenever you go into material mode, you can just press the Z key, material preview. You should be able to see it, but right now we can't. So that probably means is we need to select everything, press U, and then unwrap, and now we can see it. So when we unwrap this, you're going to see that the UVs actually look pretty decent, but some areas are kind of distorted. Now this is very important, because when you're unwrapping hard surface models, you don't want to use angle-based. Angle-based is for more organic, smooth models. For hard surface, we want to use conformal, and that's going to immediately fix the issue. And this is how you automate the unwrapping process. All you have to do is use the select sharp edges feature, and then you would basically just unwrap it. Really easy. What most people do in tutorials is they simply go to each edge and try to manually mark things from scratch. That's not the way to do it. It's going to take up way too much time that is valuable. However, what we do need to do when we're automating this process is undo some of the edges that don't need to be marked. And this is where I can bring you into the next topic regarding how you can remove seams that you don't need, and how you can also add seams that you do need. So this is kind of a tricky topic if you don't understand what to look for, so I'm going to make this into a separate video. Welcome back. In this video we're going to continue with the automation process of our workflow, specifically focusing on UVs, because UVs are what we're automating here. So there's going to be some issues that occur whenever we use the select sharp edges feature. It does most of the work for us, but there are some scraps that we have to pick up at the end, because oftentimes there's going to be angles that are marked that we don't really need to have marked. It doesn't matter if they're there, it's just the less seams you have, the better the textures are going to look. They're not going to break at those seams, right? So I'm going to discuss specific situations here. In this video, we're going to discuss chamfers, because chamfers are notorious for getting double markings. So let me show you what I mean. I'm going to go ahead and add in a cube here. All right. And I'm just going to go ahead and chamfer it, so just a one segment bevel. Now, obviously, this chamfer right here is 45 degrees. And whenever we were using that select sharp edges feature, the sharpness threshold here is 30 degrees, which means anything above 30 degrees will be marked here. In this case, every single angle on this little box here is above 30 degrees, so every single edge is going to get marked. So you're going to see when I press Ctrl E and mark a seam, we're going to have a seam here and a seam here on that chamfer. Now, alternatively, if this were, had more segments on it, whenever we use, let's do like this many. So the more segments I add, it keeps cutting the angle in half. So we start at 90 degrees, and then when we bevel it, we go to 45 degrees. And then when we bevel it again, we go to 22.5 degrees, and so on. So this would be like 11 degrees roughly. So what would happen if we use the Select Sharp Edges tool this time? It's not going to select this bevel here because the 11 degrees per angle for each of these bevel segments is below 30. So only the angles above 30 degrees are getting selected. So in these cases, whenever you mark a seam, you just kind of have it on those sharper edges. So hopefully you kind of understand why the chamfers are getting these double markings here. Now, with that being said, we don't need double markings on our chamfers. It's always going to be a waste. You can remove at least one. So in this case, I could just press, let me actually go up here, turn on Live Unwrap so it automatically updates. So what I could do here is press Ctrl E, clear the seam. I could do it over here as well. Ctrl E, clear the seam. And you can basically do this to every single one of your 45 degree bevels. So I could do it here, like that. We could do it here. And I don't think there's any more chamfers on this piece really. Now you could potentially go even further. What I like to do in this case is just remove all of them if we're able to. Because sometimes, you're going to see in this case, we were not able to remove all of them. We kind of get this skewing effect now. But sometimes you're able to remove even more. As long as you have one marked somewhere, you'll generally have very clean and straight sets of UVs. So we could actually remove the one here, but we're going to have to leave at least one here to avoid that weird warping we had going on. So let's see what else we could do. Maybe we could go over here and try to remove this one, clear that seam. It kind of rotated the UVs a little bit, so in this case we're probably not going to be able to get away with that, unfortunately. But the important part is that you just test it out and see if it's going to work or not. And the more you do it, the more you'll kind of intuitively understand what is going to work and what is not going to work. So I just wanted to present that here. So really that's the only thing we're doing. We're going back to the model after we've marked the seams with the Select Sharp Edges feature, and we're removing seams that we don't actually need. Here we have another hard angle, so we could probably clear the seam on this one. Over here as well. Could clear it here. And we could also clear it here, like that. So chamfers are the most obvious areas where we can remove seams, but there's additional areas where we can remove even more seams. And there's also going to be situations where we end up needing to add seams. So the next video is going to discuss exactly which seams we can remove and also which seams we might need to add. So I'll see you in the next video. Alright, so we're back to work with our automation on our UVs. So we've already discussed areas where we can remove seams specifically on our chamfers, right? But are there additional areas where we can remove even more seams? And generally the answer is yes. So before I show you that, I want to show you an example. So let's go ahead and take a cube here, and what I'm going to do with this cube is I'm just going to make like a random n-gon cut here in the side, okay? So I'm going to do something like this, and then maybe like this, and then I'm going to simply bevel it with the B key. We can give it, I don't know how many segments, maybe like 6, like that. And then I'll just go ahead and apply that boolean there. Now remember, if we want to mark the seams on the sharp edges, what we would do is we would select the sharp edges and then press Control E and mark the seam. And in the last video, I already showed you kind of how, or last video or the first video, I forget which one it was, but I already showed you how the select sharp edges feature works. It selects all the edges that have an angle above 30 degrees. So, you know, here would be 90, here would be 90, here would be 90. You get the idea, right? Now, in situations like this, when you have really tight bevels, kind of like right here, oftentimes what happens is the middlemost one ends up catching because this one actually hit the angle threshold here. It's not very obvious. It's not something that you should really like see off the bat. I couldn't tell you what this angle is, but oftentimes you will have angles like this caught. So obviously you could adjust the sharpness threshold, which I really don't like doing. I like to keep it at 30. But if you ever get a situation where you have a tight bevel and it has a seam inside of it, what you want to do is remove those as well. So Control E and then clear the seam. You have to be really careful because these ones are kind of sneaky. You don't always notice these will catch, but the tighter the bevel, the more likely you are to get one of those caught with our 30-degree threshold. Now, if we go back to our original piece we were working on, you're going to see we actually had that exact situation. So if I zoom in onto this bevel, you're going to see that some of these edges ended up getting caught. And these are the least obvious ones. You're going to oftentimes end up getting seams like this and you might not even notice. That's why I wanted to make a separate video dedicated to that. So make sure on your tighter bevels, you keep an eye out because oftentimes you might end up getting some seams there that you don't want. So all you would really do is click it and then Control E to clear the seam. And then it should update the seams for you. You can see as long as you have Live Unwrap turned on, the moment I cleared those, it kind of updated the UVs and it looks a lot better. So same exact problem here. We're just going to go ahead and clear that one out. So obviously you should be able to see that the Select Sharp Edges feature is not perfect, but it does 90% of the work for us and we just have to pick up the scraps. Let's see if there's anything else we missed here. These are pretty wider bevels, so none of these ended up getting caught, which is good. We can go down through here. You're going to see we actually had some that got caught right here. And I also noticed that these bevel segments are less than here. So let me just quickly symmetrize this piece. So we'll just add a symmetry. There we go, that should take care of it. Anytime you symmetrize, you always want to remove that middle edge and then re-unwrap it. At least that's what I do. So if you ever need to symmetrize something over, just clear out that middle edge and then unwrap it again. Cool, so you're going to see, it looks like these little angles here got caught, which is no good. So we can clear those out, and already that's a lot better. Areas like this you probably won't even see, but it's always good to kind of force good habit. So right here as well, these ended up getting caught, so we're going to go ahead and clear those. And you're going to see, in this case, we actually do need one seam to hold this one together. And this actually brings me to the topic that I'm going to discuss in the next video. So you're going to see if I left at least one seam here, the UVs look clean, but if I remove that seam, they end up getting kind of like warped in and distorted. So you're probably wondering why exactly this occurs, so we're going to discuss exactly what's happening in the next video. So in the last video, I showed you how sometimes you can have these sneaky edge markings that get caught that we don't actually want to get caught. So I want to show you a situation where we're going to have some issues when we try to remove those sneaky edges, and I kind of hinted at it in the last video. So remember down here when we were clearing these pieces out, if you forget, just rewatch the last video right at the end, we were clearing out some of these sharp edges that ended up getting marked, right? You're going to see when I cleared out all of those, we ended up getting this really weird kind of distortion and skewing going in. See how it's kind of like warped down here? We don't want that. Now before I show you how to fix it, I want to kind of give you the intuition so you can actually understand what is causing it, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and add in a cylinder here. Now a cylinder is still something I consider a hard surface object because we still have very clear, hard defined edges on the top and bottom. But this is kind of a unique situation when it comes to marking seams. So I'm going to go ahead and sharpen it. And what would happen if we wanted to unwrap this cylinder? Well, we could use our automation trick. We would go to select the sharp edges, and then Control E to mark the seams, right? Let me go ahead and give it that UV's material as well so we can actually see the checker texture. So we'll go in here, and you're going to see that although the UVs look fine, or the checkers here on the top look fine, same for the bottom, we get this really nasty skewing, and you might think, okay, well, let me just try changing this to angle based. Doesn't do anything, right? The reason this is occurring is because we need at least one seam that connects the top and the bottom. And I want to show you exactly what's happening so you can get a visual. So if I alt click on these faces and I kind of pull open the UV editor, you're going to kind of see what we have here. This is what I call a ring. So for a second, pretend you have a piece of paper, right? And you have a flat sheet of paper, just notebook paper, and you wanted to fold it into a ring. What would you do? You would take both ends of the piece of paper, you would tape it together at the top, and then you'd have a ring, right? Now, what if you wanted to flatten the paper out again after you made the ring? You would simply just remove the tape or cut it with scissors or whatever. And this is kind of the same idea with these types of situations. We have a ring going all the way around, but you're going to see that this it gets projected. These checkered textures get projected onto that ring. So it's projecting from 2D to 3D, and you can already see it's kind of skewed in the 2D editor. So it's going to be very skewed in the 3D editor when it projects it onto the model. So in order to fix this, just like the paper analogy I just gave you, we need to flatten out this ring. And the way we flatten out a ring is we just cut it. We remove the piece of tape, or we cut it, whatever you want to do. And basically, if you want to cut something in 3D, at least in the sense of UVs, you would simply mark a seam. So I'm going to press Control E and then mark the seam. And immediately you're going to see that it flattens out. And now we have a really clean projection onto the cylinder. So with this idea in mind, you should be able to understand kind of what's happening here on the bottom. So if we zoom in, you're going to see that if we were to select all these portions here, it's going to end up having some sort of ring pattern, right? You can kind of see has some sort of resemblance of a ring. So in order to flatten that out, we need to just put one cut in there somewhere. So you can put this pretty much anywhere. I just tend to put it in like a spot that's not very obvious, but any of these will work fine. So maybe just right here on this edge, I could just press Control E and mark the seam. And immediately you're going to see now if I select this interior portion, it is completely straight, which is exactly what I wanted. And these straight UVs are what are going to give you the most clean and accurate projection because you don't have any sort of round skewing effects. You just have a clean, straight set of UVs, which is going to give you a very nice projection onto your model. So you could have even more seams. You could just keep adding seams to your heart's content, but you don't need to add this many seams. You're going to see it just keeps splitting it up more and more and more for no good reason. We don't need all of these splits because each split we have is going to have a discontinuation of the texture. So really all you need is one single marking when you get a ring effect like that. You don't need 2, you don't need 5 or 10. You just need one single marking, and that's exactly what I did here. So whenever you run into situations where it begins to skew like that, you want to make sure that you have at least one marking in there, and it should fix the problem. And this kind of brings me into the next topic of automation, which has to do with continuous set of faces. So this is a very powerful concept, so I'm going to dedicate another video to this. So I'll see you in the next one. So in this video, I want to talk about continuous sets of faces. This is how you can pretty much guarantee which seams you need and which seams you do not need. So before we go into this, I just want to show you another simple example to kind of get you understanding how it works. So I'm going to go ahead and just use a cube, and maybe on this cube, we'll just make some very basic designs just for fun. Why not? Maybe a round bevel here. Maybe a chamfer here. Cool. So now what we're going to do is we're going to unwrap this. So to unwrap it, we're going to go to select sharp edges. Make sure you're in edge mode. We're going to press Control E, mark the seam, and we'll just give it that UV's material. And then to preview it, we'll just go into material mode. So now we have a really nice clean unwrap on this object. I'll also sharpen it out to make it a bit smoother. Cool. So as you can see, we have a nice continuous set of faces that go all the way around. And the way you know if it's nice and continuous is if you alt-click on the faces, it connects. It's completely cyclic. It starts at one point and ends at the same point. There's no discontinuity there. So in these types of situations, you only need one single seam, and this is kind of following up on the last video discussing rings. You only need one seam here. Let me go ahead and open up the UV editor. So you're going to see we have quite a few different, layouts of UVs here, and that's because we have a seam right here, we have a seam here, and also another seam here. This isn't like a massive problem, but obviously each place you have a seam means you're going to have a discontinuity on them. So like right here, for example, you're going to see a very clear discontinuity where that seam is. Down here, we're going to have a pretty similar effect. Same for right here, we have a discontinuous set. So really what you want to do is remove every single seam except for one. The reason you want to leave one is because if you don't leave one, you'll end up getting a ring, like we discussed in the last video. So you just want to keep one. You can put it pretty much anywhere. I choose to put these seams in a location that's not very obvious. So if this were sitting on the floor and you weren't going to see the bottom, the best spot to put this seam would probably be right here in the front. So now you're going to see, even though we had 4 seams before, since we removed 3 of them and we have 1 left, we still get a very clean result, and we only have 1 discontinuous area now as opposed to 4. You're going to see it flows through very nice now. So with this idea in mind, you can apply the same concept to any hard surface object. Doesn't matter what type it is, the same exact concept will apply. So on this one, I don't really know if we have any specific continuous sets of faces going on. This one, I'm going to try to find a better example here on this weapon. So maybe instead of that one, we could maybe use this barrel here. So I'm just going to go into face mode, and what we're going to do is mark the seams for this. We'll go to select sharp edges, Control E, mark the seam, and then we'll simply go in here and give it the UV's material, and just make sure you're in material mode. And then all you have to do is press U to unwrap it. So you're going to see in this specific case, we have a lot of unnecessary seams on this one. So basically what we need to do is remove all the seams, since this is pretty much a continuous set of faces. We're going to remove all but one seam. And I also forgot to mention, make sure your scale is applied. In this case, my scale is uniform, so we're fine. Otherwise, the UVs might be a bit distorted. Cool, so you're going to see we have way too many seams going on right now. The first thing I want to do is maybe dissolve out this middle edge. We don't need this, so Control X. We can unwrap it again. But what we do need to do is remove all these extra seams right here. It might be easier to turn off your bevel in edit mode by clicking this button. Okay, so we're just going to go through here. We can clear those out. We can clear these out here. Same for this side. You could just symmetrize once you've dealt with one side. You could just Alt-X and symmetrize the other side. And already, this is a lot better because now the UVs are flowing through very nicely as compared to before, where pretty much every single edge was splitting it up and we had just a lot of discontinuous textures here. So this is the power of continuous sets of faces. You only need one single seam to hold it. So we're still missing some. We can remove this and remove this, and we can also remove this one, and this is going to be the one we're just going to keep. If you remove it, we're going to end up getting a ring, which is going to cause this really nasty skewing like we've already discussed before. In this case, it's just a mess, so we want to have at least one seam here, and maybe we'll put this seam on the bottom where it's a bit less obvious. So right here, Control E and mark seam. Cool. And also we have some additional edges here in the back. I can just dissolve those out with Control X and then just unwrap it again. Cool. And you're going to see we have a much better result with our unwrap. So this is the power of continuous sets of faces. All you need to do is have one seam. You don't need any more than that. And as long as you follow that guideline, you're going to have very clean unwraps with no discontinuities in your texture. So in the next video, I would like to recap these methods that we discussed in the last few videos and put them all together by unwrapping another piece that kind of incorporates all these different concepts. So I'll see you in the next video. Alright, welcome back. In this video, we're going to kind of put everything together that I showed you in this automation section. So what we're going to do is find a piece that probably incorporates all the elements I already showed you. I want to find a more complex piece so we can really do everything that we already discussed in one video. So I'm thinking maybe we could do this little piece of the scope. So I'm going to go ahead and / on the numpad to isolate this, and we're going to completely unwrap this thing using all the techniques I've already shown you. So if you remember, I presented 5 main methods. I showed you the best way to automate your seams, which is to go into edge mode and select the sharp edges and then Control E to mark the seams. And then I showed you all the different ways to kind of clean up the scrap. So the first one is to clean out any seams marked on chamfers. The second one is to look for rings, so basically loops that go all the way around and connect. You're going to need at least one seam in there to flatten it out. And I also showed you other things like the sneaky markings, kind of like we have right here and also inside of here. And I also showed you how to deal with continuous sets of faces. So with all that information, we're going to go ahead and fix this thing up. And as always, if you ever forget some of those techniques, you can just hop back to those videos. That's why I made them short and easy to understand, because they're not that complicated. So the first thing I'm going to focus on are the chamfer seams that we get. So you're going to see right here, I'll turn off the bevel. Right here we pretty much have a chamfer. It's not really 45 degrees, but close enough. So on this one, we could clear out at least one of the seams. But before I do that, let me quickly go into material mode and give this the UV's material. Cool. So I'm going to go ahead and Control E to clear that seam. Now if you notice, this is also a continuous set of faces, and like I said, with continuous sets of faces, we only need one seam to hold it together. So as a matter of fact, we can clear out this one, and this one, because we already have a seam over here holding it together. So Control E, clear the seam. As a matter of fact, we could probably go again on this one, clear that seam, and we could probably clear this one as well. This one looks like one of those sneaky edge markings, so we're going to go ahead and clear that one. And you're going to see as this kind of continues all the way down, you're going to see this one is actually going to hold it together for us, but we also have one back here. So we could also clear this seam. We could clear this seam. Now we can't clear this seam because what's going to happen is it's going to collapse, because like I said, we need at least one seam holding these continuous sets of faces together. And as of right now, that's the only one. As a matter of fact, if you wanted to put the seam down here, that might even be a better spot, so we could mark the seam there and clear this one out, because this piece would probably be a little bit more obvious than the seam being marked down here, but it's really not that big of a deal. So we basically dealt with those little chamfered pieces and also the continuous sets of faces, and you'll just kind of be able to see this right off the bat the more you do this. I also want to check for some additional sneaky edge markings, kind of like we have right here. So we can go ahead and clear that one out. I'm only going to focus on one side because we can always symmetrize to the other side. So I'm going to go ahead and clear these out. Control E and clear the seam. It doesn't look like this is symmetrized anyways because these segments are different. It doesn't matter, we're going to clear those out. Those were some sneaky edge markings as well. I don't think there's any more sneaky edge markings down here. We could probably remove one of these, maybe not. I thought that maybe that would help out, but not really. So we'll just go ahead and leave those alone on the bottom. We're not going to really see that piece anyways because it's attached to the bottom, so really we don't have to worry about the seams there on the bottom at all. Okay, cool. So what else are we missing? Here's a situation where we have a ring. So like I said, if you have a ring, you can flatten that ring by simply marking a seam. So cutting it basically. So I'm going to put this one on the bottom, I guess. Control E, mark seam, and it's still not working, and I think that's because we actually have a loop going all the way through. I could simply just hold the Alt key so it selects all the way through, and then I could mark the seam. And there we go, a lot better. So as you can see, we already found quite a few issues. We found a chamfer seams, we found continuous sets of faces, we found a ring, And we also found some sneaky edge markings. So this piece actually incorporated all the different elements that you want to use in your seam automation. So you can really begin to see how simply following those 4 automation tricks I gave you can tackle any situation in hard surface unwrapping. This is exactly what I wanted to accomplish with this course, because people overcomplicate seams way more than they need to be. It's very simple. You follow those 4 automation techniques and it's going to work for every single hard surface object. Cool. So I don't think there's anything else really missed in here. This is a pretty decent unwrap. I don't see any further things we could really clean up. Let's just kind of pan around here and just see how it looks. Let me also symmetrize because we have less segments here than we do here. So you can always just go in and Alt-X to symmetrize. And then what I like to do is dissolve out that middle edge with Control-X. You want to be careful though, because you might dissolve out that piece in the cylinder. So I'll just Control-click around for a bit more manual control. So we can dissolve up to here with Control-X, and then dissolve all the way through here with Control-X, and then just unwrap it one more time. There we go. So that's really it. You're going to apply the same exact process to all the other pieces on this model. And once we've done that, once we've unwrapped all the pieces, what we can do is discuss how to get a clean pack with UV Packmaster, which is also another way to automate the packing process. So we're going to discuss all of that, don't worry. So after we unwrap this thing, we'll discuss packing and how you can get a really efficient pack for your UVs. And if you don't really know what packing means, we'll discuss all of that as well, don't worry. Welcome back. So in this video, we're going to unwrap this entire weapon here. So you should have all the tools that you need to automate your UVs that I've already shown you. Just to recap, you want to pay attention to rings, continuous sets of faces, those sneaky edge markings, and also the chamfered edge markings that we discussed. If you forget any of those videos, go back and watch them. They're short, they're easy to digest. But for now, we're going to go ahead and unwrap this entire thing from scratch using those techniques. So there's a few different ways you could approach this. You could try to mark all the sharp edges at once. So you would basically select everything, go into edge mode, and then just kind of do all of that at once. Oftentimes what I do is I just go piece by piece so I can really focus in. It doesn't matter too much because at the end of the day, whether you mark everything in one swoop or you do them individually, you're still going to have to go in and clean up those additional seams that you don't need. So it doesn't really matter what you choose to do. What I think I'm going to do is just select one of these pieces. We're first going to have to add our UVs material. I already have it here. I'll just make another one to make sure you remember what to do. You basically add a new material. You can call it UVs. I guess UVs 001 in this case. We're going to drag out the shader editor and then simply add in an image texture. Depending on the resolution you want, you would just click new and then choose it. Generally 2 to 4K is fine. We can just do 2K in this example. If this is like a first-person shooter gun, you might even want higher quality. So you could even go to like 4K. It's not a bad idea. We'll name this UVs, and then generated type will be set to UV grid. Cool. Then we'll click OK and connect this up. Now I want to make sure every single piece on here has this UVs material because I want to make sure we can preview that checker texture. So I'm just going to select this piece that has the material. We'll press the A key, click the drop down menu, and then copy material to selected. So it'll basically copy from that active selection, the one with the checker texture. So we'll click here and copy that over. You're going to see we don't really get much of a result, but that's because 1, we haven't marked our seams, and 2, we haven't unwrapped it. So don't worry too much about that. So we could just go piece by piece, or to make life a little bit easier, we could select everything with the A key, tab into edge mode, make sure everything is deselected here in edge mode, and then we could simply go up here to select sharp edges, and then Control E to mark the seam. And then after that, all we would have to do is select everything and unwrap it. So U and then unwrap. Now you're going to see we have an option down here. It says object has non-uniform scale. So that probably means we need to apply our scale. It's always important you apply your scale, otherwise you might get warped and scaled UVs. It won't look good. So what we're going to do is tab back into object mode, press Control A, and then apply the scale, and we should be good to go now. Awesome, so now we can just go back into edit mode and just unwrap it one more time with everything selected, U, and then unwrap. You can see a few things changed, and make sure the method is set to conformal. Now there's probably going to be a few issues, but we're going to go and clean up all these piece by piece, especially the stock back here, whatever this is. It kind of looks a bit, something's going on with the unwrap there. I'm not too sure what it is. So now what we need to do is go to each piece and pick up the scraps using the automation techniques we already discussed in the previous few videos. Some may argue this isn't really automation, but 90% of the work is already automated when you're using the Select Sharp Edges feature. So I'd much rather coin the term automation because it's going to be way more efficient than starting from scratch like most videos would show you. So I'm going to go ahead and start with this piece because this one has some issues with it. So I'll just press / on the numpad. Not too sure what's going on here. Okay, interesting. The first thing I notice is that this is not symmetrical. There's less bevels here than over here, so I think I forgot to symmetrize it. So we're going to go ahead, go into object mode, Alt-X, and then change this to symmetry, and just symmetrize it. And then we can go ahead and dissolve out these edges going down the middle here. Can dissolve that one out at least, and then also this one here. So let's go ahead and unwrap it one more time. Select everything, U, and then unwrap, and you're going to see that seem to fix the issue. Now don't worry about the size of the squares. It's not going to matter because at the end of this we're going to unwrap everything together, so the squares are going to change size anyways. The only thing you want to focus on is, are there any warps or seams we can remove? That's all we're focusing on here. So first of all, it looks like the sharp edges didn't actually quite catch these right here. So the first thing I could try, we might not even need them, the first thing I could do is maybe remove these two, clear the seam there, and that seemed to do a good job. Make sure your live unwrap is turned on so that way anytime you make a change it automatically unwraps for you. Now we might be able to clear this out. I think it might warp a little bit, so it might not work, but we can try. You're going to see it kind of skews up, so I'm just going to go ahead and leave that seam there, I think. So far so good. Now as you can see here, we have a nice continuous set of faces flowing through, so we can go ahead and clear out this seam. Awesome. This one we might be able to clear out. Let's give it a try and just see how it looks. Got to be careful with these types of situations. It actually looks pretty clean. You're going to see it kind of pans out a little bit in these corners, but nothing super significant, so I'm going to go ahead and clear those out. We could also clear out this one because we still have a nice set of seams around here holding it. Okay, these we can probably remove as well because these are technically nice and continuous flowing through here, right? So we could probably clear these out. There we go, looks good. Same for this side, clear those out. A little bit wobbly right here, but that's actually not going to really cause much of an issue. If it bothers you, you could always leave one seam here, or perhaps what you could do is put a seam straight down the center here instead, and that might help it stay a bit straighter. And we should probably also put a seam here and a seam here as well, just to kind of close that flow up a little bit. Cool, that should be fine. We're not going to really see the bottom of this piece, so I'm not worried too much about it. Now let's see, is there anything else we can clear out here? I think we got most of it. Looks pretty good to me, and we can just kind of pan around in object mode. These are rotated, that's fine. I just want to make sure they're straight. That's the most important part. So I just want to show you kind of the difference now. So this is a more angular piece, especially with all these rounded areas, and you're going to see that in this case, an angle-based unwrap would actually be a little bit more accurate, as you can see here. Everything is a bit more even and nice, so I just kind of want to show you that the more angular the shape, the better the angle-based limit method is going to work. But I'm just going to keep it on conformal for now because at the end of this, we're going to unwrap everything together, so it's not going to matter too much here. So this one's good enough. We're going to go ahead and hide that piece. Let's hop back to this one. Okay, so let's see, what can we clear out? So this is technically a chamfer right here. So maybe what we could do is clear out up to here. Control E, clear seam. It's a bit rotated, but that's fine. Right here as well, Control E and clear that seam. They can be rotated, just make sure they're not warped at all. That's the most important part. Okay, let's see what else we have. So we could go ahead and clear out this inner portion of this chamfer. Okay, we're gonna have to have this one here on the outside because this one's kind of holding all these angles together. If we clear that one, it's just gonna collapse. So we're gonna have to have at least that seam there. Now we do have a ring. If we alt click and select this entire portion, you're gonna see if we go into the UV editor, we have a ring. So let's go ahead and flatten that ring by just putting a seam somewhere. Doesn't really matter where. And as a matter of fact, this one's going to have to go all the way through because this portion here as well is also a ring, as you can see. So as a matter of fact, we can just hold the Alt key and put a seam all the way through, and that should clean everything up very nicely. If I just select it again, you should be able to see that. Now we have a nice straight result. It's a little bit skewed, but later on we're going to discuss a tool that allows us to straighten this out, which is called UV squares. Sometimes it works, sometimes it's a little bit iffy, but we're going to discuss that tool later. For right now, I'm just worried about any sort of skewing. We can also clear out this inner seam. Clear that one, cool. So far so good. Now this rotating is a little bit excessive, so that does kind of bother me. So what I think I'm going to do is put this seam back. I think it's just going to look a bit cleaner that way. So just go ahead and put that seam back. It's not that big of a deal. We could try doing this one instead. Might give us a little bit of a better result. Yep, much better. So it doesn't really matter which side of the chamfer you choose. Choose which one ends up giving you the cleanest looking results. So that one looks much better. Okay, so let's go through here. So once again, we have a continuous set of faces going all the way through here. Right? All the way through. So let's see what we can clear out. Well, we have one seam here and one seam here, so all we need is one, so you can just clear out one or the other. Just make sure you have at least one holding it, or it's going to collapse into a ring. So this is looking good. We have a few sneaky markings in here we can clear out. So clear those, and then also clear these, but if we clear all of them, we're going to end up getting a ring here, as you can see. So we're going to have at least one of those marked. So maybe we'll just mark this one on the side. There we go. And now that set of faces should be nice and straight if we select it. You can see, there we go, a nice and straight set. So at this point, you should kind of be getting the hang of it, building that intuition that you need. So that's really the goal here. Let's see, do we have any sneaky markings on the bottom? I don't think we do, which is good. We could do a little bit of a cleanup right here, so let's go ahead and, whoops, let's go ahead and see, press period key on the numpad to zoom in. Let me turn off the bevel here. These are basically continuous sets of faces, so I could probably clear out all of these seams right here. Clear that. And of course, we're going to have at least one to avoid getting a ring. So we're just going to put a seam straight down the middle here is fine. We can also clear out this edge here. We don't need that. We can mark a seam. Should be good. And then same for here. We can put a seam straight down the center like that. And then clear out these ones because they're on a continuous set of faces. So we need at least one to hold them together, which would be right here. Awesome. So this is probably about done. There's not too much left to do on this piece. So I'm going to go ahead / on the numpad to go back into global view, and we'll press the H key to hide that. This one should be really easy because it's just a very basic shape. First thing I'm going to do is clear out this middle edge, so Control X. Now we have a nice continuous set of faces here, so pretty much all of these we can clear out, right? So Control E and clear those seams. We can clear this one as well. Also this one. And we can even clear this one because we have the holding edge down here, right? So clear out that seam, and that should be good enough. And I think that's about as good as we're going to get, so that one's done. That was super easy to do. And actually, I just noticed here, before I ended that piece, you're going to see it kind of like it's like a rectangle right here. It's not flowing through very nicely. And if you unwrap it and it doesn't fix itself, that almost immediately tells me there's a mirror modifier here. And what that mirror modifier is doing is mirroring from the center, so it's kind of squashing these pieces together. All we have to do is either remove the mirror, or if you want to be safe, you can just apply the mirror and then unwrap it one more time and you should be good to go. So if that ever happens, it's probably just a mirror modifier you have to apply and then just unwrap it again. Awesome, so we can go ahead and hide that piece. Let's go to this little, not a little one, this big piece here. We already basically did this one in the other videos, so this one should make pretty much complete sense to you. So let's focus on the chamfers here. We can clear out those chamfers like that. We're going to actually have to have at least one here because it starts to kind of warp, so just keep one. We can remove these because these are a continuous set of faces, right? So clear these out and clear these out. We can also clear that edge and then also this edge right here. Cool. And let's see, we have a few sneaky edge markings down here, like I showed you in the video discussing that. We're just going to have at least one edge here to avoid getting a ring. So I'll just clear out that one and we should be good to go. So we can just kind of pan around here. Looks good. We could maybe clear out this. So we could clear that seam. And then we could also clear that seam as well. Looks good. Awesome. So that one's done. That was a pretty easy piece. Gonna press the H key to hide it. This one we could go to. This one should be pretty easy because all we really need to do, well, first of all, I just realized we could have probably used these pieces or removed these little crevices to have them baked, but I'll just go ahead and do that real quick. We don't need these because these little details here can be baked. So I'm gonna go ahead and Alt click, Alt Shift click, X to delete vertices, and then all we have to do is bridge these edge loops together, bridge these edge loops together, and we can also just dissolve out these. We don't need all of these right here. Control X, awesome. Then if we just go back into material mode, all we need to do is put one single seam down the center, so mark seam, and then also we're going to need to hold it together by marking these caps here. So Alt Shift click. Kind of a tricky situation there, but it should clean everything up if you just mark that there to kind of close it off. Cool, so now we have a nice unwrap for that piece. We can hide it. These should be really easy because these are basically just rings right off the bat, so all you do is you drop a seam. Actually, we're going to need one on the inside as well, so maybe I could just hold the Alt key and then mark a seam like that. Same for here, Alt key, mark seam. Super easy. This piece right here is basically just another ring all the way around, right? So all we need to do is put one seam here on the bottom, and just to really emphasize that visual to get you to understand. I always love watching, you know, these little ring patterns, right, turn into something completely straight. So if we go down here and mark a seam, it just looks so much more, you know, satisfying. Cool. So that one was really easy. Can hide that. Let's go to this little trigger piece and see how this looks. So I'm going to go ahead and let's see. So we have a continuous set of faces going through here, right? So we can go ahead and basically unmark these seams because we still should have some supporting seams as we go around. So we can clear those. We can't really clear, actually yes we can because we have a holding seam down here. So we can definitely clear this one out as well. Now we're going to leave these here at the bottom because they're holding everything together. If we remove them, it's just going to kind of collapse. Cool. So let me go ahead and also remove this edge down the center. We don't need it. Control X. And I also notice we have some really weird distortions going on right here. That's interesting. And it looks like that's because some of these areas didn't actually get caught when we selected the sharp edges. You're going to see this one actually got missed. So what we're going to have to do is simply just hold the Alt key and just Alt-Shift click all the way around. Just make sure we get everything in there. Okay, then we'll just press Control-E and mark the seam. And there we go, that should fix everything up very nicely. Now this interior portion, we don't need to have any seams on because it's a chamfer. So just make sure all of that's selected, Control-E, and then clear the seam. Looks good. Now it does look like we have some distortions going on in here, and that's probably because we have a ring. Like 90% of the time when you get distortions like that, it's almost always because you have some sort of ring formation inside your UV editor. And we can even go in here and take a look if you're unsure. Basically some sort of ring formation, right? And I also notice we have a few sneaky edge markings right here. I'm going to clear those out by clearing the seam. And then just to kind of close up that ring, we could probably just put a seam right through here. We just hold the Alt key and just drop a seam somewhere. It doesn't really matter where. We also have another sneaky seam causing some issues, so we can clear that one out. Okay. You're going to see it kind of looks a bit strange here, doesn't it? And that's probably because we haven't done any work to fix the other side up. So just real quick, I'm going to Alt-X to symmetrize over. And then if we just unwrap this again, it should kind of fix everything up. Maybe not. Kind of made things worse. Interesting. But I think I see the problem right here. You're going to see the Select Sharp Edges feature simply didn't select this portion here. So now it's kind of pulling all the way through this area. That's no good. So let's just make sure we really close up these sharp edges here, because if you don't, you're going to end up getting mayhem like this. So maybe we'll just put the seam here. That should clean everything up. And then since we have a chamfer, we only need one set of seams on the chamfer, so these can easily be cleared out, no problem. Control-E and clear seam. Now it looks like we have a seam here and a seam here. We only need one, so I'll just clear out this one. And also make sure these connect, so make sure both of these are marked. Okay, and you're going to see we have a pretty clean unwrap. Let's see if we're missing anything. So we have a bit more chamfers down here, so I could easily just go in and clear out this one. So Control-E and clear that seam. And I think we're just about done here. Maybe I could remove just this one. Clear that seam and keep this one to avoid a ring. And that should be just about it. So let me just clear out, dissolve out this edge down the center. Control-X. Unwrap it again, and now we have a really clean unwrap on this trigger. Cool, so let's go ahead and hide that. That one had a few complex examples worth showing you, so I'm kind of glad we were able to go over that one, because sometimes the sharp edges simply do not catch the edges that you really need, and that's where a lot of people get tripped up with UVs. They get these weird distortions, and fixing them is easy, they just don't know where to look. So hopefully that kind of gave you some clarity. So this trigger, or this little, yeah, this is the trigger itself, so this should be easy. I'm going to go ahead and, looks like the entire thing got marked, so let's go ahead and unwrap it, and we can do quite a bit of work on this one. So chamfer right here, but also a continuous set of faces, so really we can dissolve out both of these, right? Because we have some holding seams right here. We might even be able to dissolve out that one as well. You can just try it out, make sure there's no collapsing issues. Let's do the same thing on this side. Clear out that, and that did not work, so we're going to have at least one seam in this case, so we'll keep that one held right there. Cool. So quite a few chamfers on this one, and also a continuous set of faces, so we can pretty much clear out all these seams as long as we have at least one here on the bottom. So I'm going to go ahead and clear out those and just leave this set right here. We could even just mark this little one here as well for clarity. Cool. So I hope this is really beginning to become intuitive. Like when I start doing stuff, I'm hoping you can just immediately spot which areas can be fixed up, because if you can, you pretty much got it, which is good. So we could clear out this one, clear that seam. The nice thing about it is I don't really have to explain it as much anymore, because it should be quite obvious at this point. So continuous set of faces, right? So we can just keep clearing all the way down as long as we have something holding it together, which we do right here. We might even be able to clear out this one, maybe, because that should continue down through here very nicely. If you're not sure, you can always test it, and if it doesn't work, you can just undo it. So let's clear out this one here, because we have some holding areas up here. Same for this side. And honestly, I think that's about it for this one. That one was really easy to do. Let me try clearing this one. We were actually able to because we have that, we already have a seam over here as well. So that's about as close as we're gonna get. That one looks good. Let's go ahead and hide it. I have no clue what this piece is. I think it's just like a random connection. So this should be super easy to do. All we really need to do is clear out. We have a sneaky edge marking right here. We have a nice continuous set of faces, so we can pretty much clear out every single seam here except for one on the bottom. So clear out all those except for this one. These seams are a little, or these checkers are a little bit angled right here, but it's not really that big of a deal because there's still no warping. That's the most important part. That one's good enough. We can go ahead and hide that. You know, the less obvious the piece, the less you have to worry about making really clean seam markings. So if there's pieces you're just never going to see, don't go overboard on it. Save your time for something that matters. Maybe we can go over to this piece now. This one should be nice and easy, but quite a bit of work we could do on here. So first of all, let me dissolve out this middle edge. And second, we have a nice continuous set of faces here. So I'm going to dissolve out these two. Okay. I'm going to dissolve out this one because we still have support down there. And then also I'm going to dissolve out those. And that should be good enough. I could maybe do a little bit of work here. This is probably overkill at this point, so I'm just doing it for clarity. We do have a chamfer, so I'm going to go ahead and clear out the double seam. Cool. And also it looks like we have a ring on the inside, so I'm just going to alt-click and mark a seam. We don't really need any edges through here, so I'm going to just dissolve those out. And let's just check the back real quick. I can also close this menu. We also need to put a seam right here to avoid that ring. Cool, and then we'll just make sure this is all dissolved out. Same with this one, dissolved out, and let's just unwrap it one more time, and then unwrap. And we have a nice continuous set of faces flowing through here, so we could also do a bit more dissolving. We could dissolve these, or I'm sorry, clear the seam on those. Clear the seam here, and we can also clear it here because we have a nice holding seam in the back. So this is pretty good right here. We can go ahead and maybe clear these out too. Actually, no, we're going to have to keep those to hold it together. Now these little notches here, I'm not going to really do too much to them. You could, if you wanted to, clear those out maybe, because it still kind of flows continuously, kind of. I'm not going to worry too much about that. No one's going to really be able to see that. And I think we could also maybe clear out those two, and also clear out that one down there. And just do a little bit of work on this continuous set of faces going around through here. So we could clear out those two, clear out these two, and then just clear out. Actually, that's good enough. That's fine. Cool, so go ahead and hide that piece. Let's do this one here. This one should be super easy. We're just going to go ahead and you're going to see we might need to do some manual marking down here. See, this one does not have any sharp edges, so this is where we have to actually mark our own because we have a manual bevel. So what I'm going to do is just control click all the way up through here and put a seam manually, and that should clean everything up for us. Now we have a nice continuous set of faces, but also some sneaky edge markings, so just going to go ahead and clear those, and these as well. We could also clear out this one, and maybe this one as well. And also maybe these two. This is just getting into the overkill territory, but I like to keep it clean. And then maybe this one and this one, because these are nice and continuous, right? So just clear out those two. And that should be good enough for that piece. Really easy. All right, I have no clue what this thing is, but these are super easy. Whenever you have a pipe that has no holes at either end, what you need to do is just put one seam down the center. That's it. One seam down the center will give you a nice unwrap, but we also have a lot of extra seams here we don't need. So in this case, I'm just going to go ahead and clear them and then mark it again manually, just right down the center on the bottom. Cool. That looks good. You can hide it. This one should be easy as well. We just need to put one seam down through here in the center, and that should be fine. Cool. This is the same thing. These are all basically cylinders, so on these guys it shouldn't be too much hassle. Also, this little crevice here can be baked as well, so let me go ahead and just get rid of it. X, delete vertices, and then just bridge these edge loops together. Right click, bridge edge loops, and then just dissolve these out. We don't need them. Okay, Control X. And then I'll just hold Alt Shift click to put seams on the caps. Go into material mode, and then just one seam down through the middle here to avoid that ring formation. Easy. So we're already making quite a bit of progress here, which I like. So let's go over to this piece now and just fix this one up so we can clear out. We have a continuous set of faces going around, right? So we can maybe clear out these two. And we also have a chamfer. Very small one, but we could still maybe clear out that. And then also do the same thing for the other side, but the other side doesn't have a chamfer, so that one is good enough. We can hide that. Here's another piece. Pretty simple object. Continuous set of faces through here. So let me just turn off the bevel so I can select these a bit easier. Right? Clear the seam. And then clear the seam. And that should be good enough. Cool, so let me go ahead and hide that. Not sure what this piece is, but once again, really easy. We have a lot of continuous sets of faces here. So basically, this entire thing, let me show you a trick. Since this entire thing is basically marked, what I could do is just press Z to go into wireframe, box select, and then simply Control E to clear the seam. And then all I'd have to do is just mark one here on the bottom. That would just save a bit of time doing that all at once. So really easy. Whenever you can use shortcuts, use shortcuts. Okay, this one right here, same idea. I could just go into wireframe, box select these, and then clear that seam, right? And then just to avoid that ring formation, we just have to put one seam here on the bottom. And also let's put one through here. And just through here to keep it nice and connected. Doesn't really matter too much in that case. I'm going to dissolve out this middle edge with Control X. And then just unwrap it one more time. And that one's looking good. Go ahead and hide it, and we're just about at the finish line. So there's like a random little piece right here. I think I missed this one. It's so small, it's not even worth worrying about. I'm just going to unwrap it and then call it a day. Let's go to this piece. This one's pretty big. I think we already did this one as a demonstration. So what I'm going to do is clear out some of these extra areas we don't need because we have a nice continuous set of faces. So we're just going to clear out all these on the top and on the side and just leave one here on the bottom so we can avoid a ring. We could do a bit more on the front if we really wanted to get into the nitty-gritty. We could just go in here and really clear out all these like that. But we're also going to need a seam to kind of avoid the ring on the inside. So what I'm going to do is just Control click to there because I don't want to mark a seam all the way through it. Okay, and let's just Control E, mark seam. and just get rid of these random sneaky markings that we ended up getting. Okay. Now right here we do have a continuous set of faces. Do you need to worry about it? Not really. I'm just going to do it anyways. Control E and clear the seam. And then I could just go in here and Alt click, Control X. I just had something in my throat. I need a sip of water. And I think that's good enough here. Yep, looks good. Just unwrap it one more time for good measure. And then hide it. Let's go to this piece. This one is basically just every single thing is a sharp edge, so we're just going to go in here and just unmark all of those except for one. Could do a bit more on the front, but it's just so tiny it's going to be impossible to see. I'm not going to worry about it. These right here, same idea. It's just they're so small, these chamfers, or I don't even know if there is a chamfer. My point exactly, it's just too small to see any potential seams, so we're just going to hide that one. You know, choose your battles. Don't be working on things that just are going to waste your time. So, same for this one. Can't really see any seams except maybe on those edges. This one's a bit bigger, so maybe we could do a bit of work on this one. So, nice continuous sets of faces all the way through, basically. So what I'm going to do is just clear out these. Let me turn off the bevel here. Just going to really get in here and clear out all of these. All we need is one here on the bottom, so as long as we have one on the bottom, we're good. Then I can just really go in here. Could even use the circle tool if I wanted to. And clear those out. I think this piece right here is separate, so don't get confused. Cool, and then we can clear all of those. Not going to even see the top, so you don't have to worry about the top. And then we'll just go through here. Same exact solution. It's a continuous set of faces, so we just need one seam marked somewhere. Bottom, top, side, doesn't matter. Which is exactly what we have. Clear the seam. And we could do a bit of work on the inside. Just avoid a ring by keeping at least one seam marked here. Okay. And we also have a mirror modifier. I'm just going to apply that. And then just clear out the edge down the center with Control X. And we'll go ahead and unwrap it. Cool. Could probably do a little bit more work if I really wanted to, but that's basically as good as we're going to get. This one right here, once again a really small piece, but if you wanted to get in here and clear out a few seams, you can go ahead and do that. Cool, we'll clear out the edge down the middle and then unwrap it. So we're just about done here, just got to deal with the scope area. Let's take a look at this one. What I'm going to do is go into wireframe, box select those, clear the seam, and then I can just alt click here, or just click and mark it. Cool. This one's a really small piece. We're probably not going to see many of the seams, but if you really wanted to, you know, fix up the chamfers here and whatnot, you can go ahead and do that. And I can barely even select them, which is already enough reason to not stress about it. Maybe clear out this one here. And we have a lot of sneaky markings on the inside of this piece, so I'm just going to go ahead and circle select all of them. Right, and we also have some like random edges inside of there, I guess. So we're just going to clear out those seams and just keep one. And maybe clear out this one right here as well. I don't know. Just going to leave it alone, to be honest with you. It's just too much work for something we're never going to see. So we can go ahead and let's symmetrize it. Make sure everything's nice and clean on both sides. Dissolve out that middle edge and then just unwrap it again. We should be good there. Then we just have this really long piece. I'm just going to unwrap it. I'm not going to really stress about this one. Really small once again. This thing right here is also really small, so I'm just going to unwrap it and leave it alone. If I wanted to, I could maybe clear out these here. but that's about as far as I'm going to mess with it. Okay, we have this long piece. So this one, I'm just going to, let me first of all go into wireframe, box select all of these edges through here, and then just clear the seam, and then just keep one marked here at the bottom. Cool. Easy enough. Then this thing right here, could do the same exact thing. Box select all these edges, clear them out, and then just put one seam here on the bottom to avoid that ring. Cool. So close to the finish line. This thing right here, I'm just gonna maybe clear out these here and then call it a day. And then we just have this little piece. This one shouldn't be too difficult. Most of these can be cleared because it's just continuous faces and chamfers basically. So we'll just clear out all of those. And we also have some stray edges here. I'm not sure why those are there. Just dissolve those. Cool. And then on these little rings right here, we could go ahead and maybe clear out this one. Don't really need it. Same for right here. And then let's just make sure we have a nice seam down the middle somewhere just to avoid any sort of ring formation. I don't think we really have one. Maybe we do. It's hard to tell because this piece is so small. We'll just mark a seam right there. Looks like it fixed it. We could do a bit more work here, but that one's good enough. We're not going to really see the bottom, so if you want to deal with the bottom, you could just go in and do that. I'm going to clear that out and clear this out, and then unwrap it, and that one should be good. Alright, so we're down to the last few pieces here. So this one, we already basically did this one in a video, so we have a few sneaky edge markings we can clear. We have a few continuous sets of faces and chamfers we can clear. A few more sneaky edge markings down here. And maybe we could clear out this one because we're going to have quite a few here at the bottom already. And just to avoid this ring on the inside, I'll just Alt-click this edge, mark a seam, and then clear out this final sneaky edge right here, and that one should be good. Cool, we'll go to this one now. Alright, so this, we have quite a few sneaky edge markings, so we'll just clear those out. And we'll just clear one of these out. And maybe these as well. And these as well. A few more sneaky edge markings we can clear out. And it looks like we have a ring or something causing some sort of distortion. Probably this right here, we might just need to put a seam and that should fix it. Cool, so that one's good. Go ahead and hide it. Then all we have left are these. These are all basically rings, so it's really easy. Just put a seam down the center, call it a day. Same for this one, just put a seam down the center, call it a day. Remove these here if you want because they're continuous. So if you want to bother, you can go ahead and clear those. Clear that one as well. Cool. And then these should be easy. These are so small, you don't have to worry too much about them. We could clear that one maybe. These screws, could maybe just do a little bit of work on those and then just call it a day. Not going to really see these screws anyways, so I'm just going to do some very quick work. Just clear out the seams on the continuous sets of faces and then call it a day. And this piece right here, just clear out the edge down the center and maybe clear out that one and we're good. This one here, we'll just clear out the middle edge and unwrap it again. And then finally, just have a few more rings, so mark a seam here, mark a seam here, and then mark a seam here. And then maybe just get rid of these on the continuous ones. Cool, so that should be almost everything. One more here, so there we go, good enough. So that should be everything. So let's go ahead and bring everything back into the scene. We can go to this low poly collection, right click, visibility, show all inside. So everything here is unwrapped as good as we can get it basically, minus maybe the few small pieces I just kind of skipped over and wasn't too worried about. So the main piece, or this main weapon, has just about as clean of UVs as we're going to get, which is exactly what I want. In this video, I want to talk about another incredibly useful way to preserve your UV space. Now this is something I commonly forget to do, so that's why I wanted to add in this video here. So check this out. If I select this barrel here, for example, notice that, 2/3 of it we can't even see. So what's happening is we're unwrapping this, but 2/3 of this unwrap is being occupied that we're not going to even see. So why do we need to utilize that extra UV space if we're not going to even see it? So let me show you what I mean. I'm just going to go to the UV editor, and I'm just going to, for demonstration purposes, use a smart UV project, which basically just an automatic way of UVing. Not very accurate or clean, but it works. So I'm going to smart UV project that one. And this is the result we get. Now watch what happens if I chop off the part we can't actually see. So I'll go ahead and cut that out, and then I'll just apply that boolean there. Now watch what happens if I run the smart UV project. Look how much more space we were able to use here. So this is one way you can kind of clean up your mesh and further optimize your UV space. And I want to show you one other way to do it. So another thing we could do, this can be kind of confusing, so make sure you pay particular attention here. Let me take this piece for example. So remember, there are going to be certain faces we can't see. Now when there are faces we can't see, there's not really a need to keep them. So for example, we can't see this face right here. So this is just unnecessary UV space we're using. So what a lot of people would think is, okay, I'm just going to delete out this face since we can't see it, right? Well, not fully right, because what happens is when we delete that, we lose the bevel. We need that face to support the bevel. So instead what we could do is we could simply, instead of deleting out the entire face, we could just inset it with the I key and then delete out that insetted portion there. So that way we still have the bevel supporting it, but we're still using quite a bit less space for unwrapping, if that makes sense. So now you're going to see we've removed a good portion of that face, but we still have the bevel in there. So you could do the same thing on this piece. For example, you could go in here, I to inset this, and then delete the faces. And the more you do that to all these different pieces, the more UV space you're going to save. Now, as for whether this is worth your time is kind of up to you. On this specific weapon, I have a lot of areas I could do this on, so I think it would actually save quite a bit of resolution. Now, if you have a more simple model or something that's not going to really give you that much extra benefit, probably not worth your time, but here, it's actually a very good idea. Alright, so there's one more concept we need to discuss here, and that is the concept of mirrored UVs. So check this out. Say you have two symmetrical pieces like this, for example. Right now, if I go into the UV editor, notice that these are actually, if I remove this checker here, notice that these are not currently overlapped. Although these pieces are symmetrical, they're identical pieces just mirrored. These faces here are not overlapping each other, and this could be a very good way to save and optimize UV space, is to simply overlap these identical pieces. So you're going to see all these different pieces I select are occupying different areas of the UV grid. These should simply be overlapping on top of each other to save additional space. So what we can actually do in this case is we can delete out half of this. So I'm just going to press the L key right here. I'm going to press X and then delete vertices, and then simply run a mirror modifier. I'll just mirror it over the 3D cursor right here. And now what we're going to have is a mirror modifier and the modifier stack. And Blender basically doesn't read this piece right here. So whenever I unwrap this, what's going to happen is the UVs right here are going to be overlapped with the UVs over here. And I can prove that by simply applying the mirror modifier. And if I select the faces now, you're going to see that all these different UVs are overlapped on top of each other. Now you want to be careful with this because a lot of people tend to think you can do this trick anywhere, and you can't, and let me show you why. So what I've seen in more extreme situations is I've seen people try to go into like a piece like this, for example, and what they'll do is they'll say, okay, well, you know, this piece is technically symmetrical, the right side, if I go into the front view, the right side is, you know, symmetrical to the left, so why don't I just delete out half of it? So you could, you know, run a symmetry, which would put a line down the center, and then delete out the half. And I'll see people try to do this. They'll try to delete out half their piece, and then simply run a mirror modifier on it. So we'll go ahead and do that. Now the issue with this is, although it's a good idea, what ends up happening is for pieces like this, we end up getting this butterfly effect panning out from the center. So all the textures are going to be identical on this side compared to this side, and it'll have this kind of butterfly effect, which is very obvious and doesn't look very clean. So the only time I use this trick with the mirrors is on pieces that don't actually have like a physical center down it. And a good example is on pieces like the one I just showed you, like right here. These pieces are on opposite ends of each other, so you won't really see the identical textures. Plus there's nothing down the center, just a gap. So pieces like this are where you should really be using this trick. And main pieces like this, you definitely should not do it on those. So I hope that kind of makes sense. It'll become a lot more clear in the next video when we unwrap this entire thing from scratch. So I just wanted to make a quick video on mirrored UVs. That's going to be another way to save UV space. So now we can go ahead and hop into the complete unwrapping video. It's going to be a bit longer, but you're going to learn a lot. So now we're ready to put everything together. We've discussed where to place your seams, we've discussed how to unwrap, and we've also discussed different ways to optimize our UVs. So if you ever need to refer to those videos, go ahead. They're always going to be there just so you can, if you forget something, they're quick access. But in this video, I want to put everything together in just one, single workflow. So we've already marked all of our seams, so that's good to go. We've made the seams as optimized as possible, meaning we removed seams we don't need and we've placed seams that we do need. So now all we have to do is unwrap everything, and of course we could technically just unwrap everything right now, go into edit mode and unwrap everything and call it a day basically. But like I said, we want to make sure we optimize this mesh because there's lots of areas we're never going to be able to see, so why waste the UV space? So let's go ahead and just do this completely from scratch. I already know we discussed some of these pieces in the other videos, but I want to do this fully from scratch. So the first thing I want to do is I want to make sure that I press Control-tilde and have the Apply Seam button turned on here in the HardOps Sharp options. What this will basically do is whenever I start trying to chop off pieces we can't see, like right here for example, what I can do is Control-click on Sharpen, which will apply that boolean, and it will also simultaneously apply seams to those sharp edges. So that's just a nice and easy way to save some time. Otherwise you would have to apply the boolean manually and then mark your seams manually. So at this point what we can do is just get back in here and just make sure we remove any seams we don't actually need. So just using the same concepts as before, we only need one seam on continuous sets of faces, so I can go ahead and clear that one out. That one looks good. I could probably do a little bit of work here as well. I could perhaps clear out these. This is a nice area of continuous sets of faces, so I could go to all these and clear those out. I could go to these, clear these out, and I could also remove that little chamfer seam on the inside. And that's probably decent enough, I'd say. Looks good. And we're just going to keep doing this for all of them. We're going to get in here, we're going to optimize this as much as possible, and we'll be good to go. Now we can also remove the faces here on the back completely because we're never going to see these faces. So I can just go ahead and completely delete out those faces since we won't see them. And as a matter of fact, what I could do is I could Alt-click on these edges right here and just kind of move these all the way back. So that way we don't have like a really long stretch of UVs because there's not really much of a need to have that extend so far back. And then we could press the F key to fill that in, and let's just unwrap it again. And yeah, that should preserve a little bit more UV space. Cool. So this is basically what we're going to be doing this entire video. We're just going to get in here and optimize everything and then unwrap everything together. So this piece right here, we have another entire portion that we're never going to be able to see. So I can go ahead and chop that off, control click on sharpen, and then just kind of remove the seams that we don't need once again. This is just me being picky. We don't really need to remove these, but it's just going to look a little bit cleaner. Could maybe remove these seams as well. Cool. And looks like this piece could actually be mirrored since there's no physical thing going down the front in the middle. So what I could do is I could actually press the L key in vertex mode, X, and then delete vertices, and then just go ahead and mirror that one. So now we're going to have a nice overlap set of UVs there. And it also looks like, I'm going to press / on the numpad. It also looks like we could delete out the faces here in the back because we're not going to actually ever see those. And one thing I like to do is I like to just press, is it Shift H? No, it's Alt H. I like to just press Alt H to kind of bring the pieces back and forth. So you can press Alt H to kind of preview how everything's going to look, and then you can press Control Z to undo that. Just a nice quick way to kind of preview everything. Alright, cool. So I'm going to go ahead and hide this piece. These right here we've already discussed. I'm just going to go ahead and delete out that end. Let me also decimate these down a bit. And then we can just go ahead and mirror that one across. Maybe we could even delete out the faces here in the back. We're not going to see those. And maybe just clear out some of those seams there. Cool. Then we'll just go ahead and hide that. Oh, one thing I do want to mention though, whenever you clear seams and unwrap these pieces and whatnot, sometimes the, size of the checkers will change. Don't worry about this at all because it's not going to matter once we unwrap everything together. So I wouldn't concern yourself with how big or how small these checkers are looking. I just concern yourself to make sure that all these checkers look nice and clean in the unwrap because the size is going to change again later anyways when we unwrap this entire gun as one. So I'm going to go ahead and hide that piece. This one right here looks okay. I'm trying to think if we couldn't remove some faces in here. I'm always thinking to myself, like, what faces can we see and what faces can we not see? And as a matter of fact, most of these faces on the inside we're not going to see at all. So I'm just going to Alt click on these in face mode. I'm going to press I to inset and then just delete those out. And then you're going to see it basically looks exactly the same. We can't see, any difference really, so looks good. So that's all I'm going to be doing in this video, guys. I'm just going to be going in here and removing all the faces that we're never going to see and just optimizing this as much as possible. So this one right here, pretty simple piece, but I could probably delete out the face on the bottom. Only issue with this is we'll end up losing that bevel right there, which kind of looks nice. So what I'm going to do is just press I to inset, and we could inset to about there. Delete those faces, and we're just basically have the same piece. So I know this takes some time, but if you really want to optimize your UVs as much as possible, this is exactly what you should be doing. Okay, so I could probably remove this part right here, but we can still kind of see it, so I might just leave it alone. We can also kind of see the faces there on the bottom, so I think I'll leave those alone as well. But what I could do is I could definitely delete out this face here and this face here because we're never going to see those. That one looks good, and go ahead and hide that. Cool, so now we're over to this one right here. So we can still see most of this piece, even though some of it's kind of hidden, you can still somewhat see it, so I don't want to remove too much of that. We could chop off like part of the back there, but it's not really that much farther extended, so I'm going to leave that one alone. I think this one will actually be okay. I'm not going to do too much with that piece. Not too much I could do. Perhaps I could, however, delete out the faces here on the top because I don't think we're ever going to see those. So I can just delete out those faces and it basically looks the same. So no big deal there. And I could also delete out the faces that are right here as well. Just completely get rid of those. And honestly, I think this is probably okay. Let me see. Yeah, I think that's about as far as we're going to get. Not too much left to optimize in this piece. I don't want to delete out these faces or anything because we can obviously see those on the weapon. Unless I press Alt-H, yeah, we can still see those faces, so I'm not going to delete those out. So it's a very easy process. I understand some people, might get kind of confused at first, but really all I'm doing is I'm looking for faces I can't see and just removing those. That's it. No sort of complicated maneuvers. Just look for faces you can't see on the model, delete them out. Easy. And if you, ever have some faces you can see and other faces you can't see, like right here, for example, I can see these faces here, but, in here I can't see it. So what you could also do is you could even drop in like a loop cut and then pull the loop cut there and then pull another loop cut over here. And you could basically kind of isolate where you delete those faces and save even more space. So you can really get to the nitty gritty and optimize this to the extreme, but it's kind of dependent on how much time you want to spend, I think this one's okay. We can go ahead and hide that. Now these interior faces of this piece, we're not going to see at all. So we will see the bevel. I want to make sure I have the bevel on the inside because if I delete these faces, I'll lose that bevel. So let me just go ahead and make sure I press I to inset those first, and then I can delete those faces. And looks pretty good. No difference at all. I like that. So not only are we reducing the poly count, we're also, removing faces, which is going to save us additional UV space because we're not going to be unwrapping faces that don't exist, right? So by default, we're going to have more UV space being used. So it's kind of a win-win overall, just the time. Sometimes the time can take a while. Now I don't know what pieces I can see here, so I'm just going to quickly press Alt-H. And it looks like this entire top face here could be deleted. We're not going to see that one at all. I don't think. Let me get a little bit closer. We can kind of see the bevel right there, so let me just go ahead and inset that before I delete it, so we can make sure we still have that nice bevel. That one's good. We can also hide this piece. Let's press Alt-H again and then Control-Z. Looks like these faces here can go completely because we're not going to even see that bevel. So the whole thing can get deleted. And we also have like a nice little chunk in here we could probably just cut off with the N-Gon cutter. So I'm just going to kind of come in here and then control click on sharpen. Looks good. Then maybe I could, remove a few seams we don't need, such as right here, for example. And we also have some sneaky edge markings right here we can clear out. And let me press Alt-H and then Control-Z. That one looks good enough. I'm going to go ahead and hide that. This one right here is fine. We can hide that as well. Okay, cool. So this piece, we have quite a bit on the inside that we can't see at all. So what I'm going to do is simply just chop that off. Control click on sharpen. And then we're going to go in here and simply delete out these faces we're not going to see, and also this little chunk right here. We can just press the L key to delete those faces as well. Cool, looks pretty good. Also, this topology is a bit tight. What I could do right here is I could simply slide that vertex there and then that vertex there, and then we'll just run a symmetry just to kind of clean that up just a little bit. Cool, so the UVs look fine. Alright, so that one we can go ahead and actually let's not hide it yet. So notice that this piece is kind of covered, this top part right here is covered by this one. So what I could do is I could simply come in here, just chop that part off, and then just control click on sharpen and delete out this face right here. It's pretty easy. So we can go ahead and hide this. Now before I hide this, let me show you a pretty cool trick. So we're not going to see the inside faces of these, right? So the first thing I'm going to do, I don't want to delete out the faces completely because we're going to lose that bevel. So what I'm going to do first is inset those faces and then delete them. Same for right here. Can dissolve out that edge and then inset these faces here and then delete those. Cool. On top of that, since these little rings right here are covering parts of this little fuel cell, what I could do is drop in a loop cut here and then drop in a loop cut right about there, and then simply remove these faces completely because they're going to be covered. Pretty cool, right? So same for this one, we can just Control R and then Control R and then delete those out. So lots of cool tricks in this video. That's why I really wanted to make this one, even though it's a bit longer. Looks good. We can go ahead and hide all those pieces. See, these are the things that a lot of people, when they get into game assets, don't think about or just forget to do, including myself. I mean, sometimes I'll just completely miss some obvious geometry I could have deleted. So that is what I really wanted to emphasize in this course. Cool, so pretty good progress so far. Now the top of this trigger, we can definitely remove all these. So I want to make sure I still have that nice bevel right there. So I'm going to make sure that I inset these first. So I to inset and then delete faces. Looks good. Now this trigger right here, it looks like you can kind of see the little mechanism on the inside. So what I'm going to do is simply just delete out all the faces here on the top because we definitely won't be able to see those. So just delete those out and just call it a day, honestly. So that's good. This one here, yeah, this one here is about as optimized as we can make it. So I'm gonna go ahead and hide that. Now we also have these faces right here that we can inset. So I'm gonna press I to inset, delete faces so we can keep the bevel there. And that one should be fine. Looks good. Also, this entire inner portion around here, we can inset and delete. So inset that and then delete those. Same for here and here. Inset these and then delete those. And that one's going to be about as optimized as we can make it. Okay, so this piece right here should be easy. We can kind of see this face. So I'm not going to do it to that one, but you know, these faces here and these faces here, we can inset and then delete. Looks good. And then this one right here, we can inset this and then delete those. Looks good. Also, there's a small portion of these faces right here that we can't see. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to simply just run a knife cut from, I don't know, I guess like right here to right here is fine. And then we can inset this face here and then delete. So we're just kind of isolating that portion, which is pretty cool. Yeah, that should be enough. And also we could remove these little caps on the side that I forgot about. So lots of geometry being saved here that you wouldn't have otherwise really considered, which is good. Let's see. No, we're gonna have to leave that one alone. Actually, that was probably a bad idea. I'm gonna leave these caps in right here because we can kind of, not these caps, but these ones right here, because we can kind of see an empty space through it. So I'm just going to make sure that's not occurring. Even though it's not a big deal, we can kind of see it. So I figured I'd remove it or put it back. Okay, so this piece, or all these pieces right here, are pretty well optimized. We can hide those. Same for these faces. We can inset these and then delete. Looks good. These little pieces right here, we can mirror to overlay the UVs. So let me go ahead and just press the L key here. Delete those vertices and then simply just mirror. We'll mirror over the 3D cursor to the other side. And we could also inset this face and then delete it. Looks good. So making good progress. Make sure you save from time to time as well. Save to a new file if you can. I'd recommend that. Okay, cool. So what else can we do to this mesh? Let's see. So this face right here, Actually, never mind. I thought that was a face, but it's not. What we could do, however, is we could go into wireframe and maybe take these edges kind of around the inside and just move these a little bit closer because we're not going to really see them anyways, see what I mean? Just so they're not as stretched. And then also we can delete out this face here on that other piece. Actually, no, we can't. We can, however, inset that and then delete it. Cool. So sometimes it'll get a little bit crazy and you have to like really start looking for areas. You don't have to be perfect. The goal isn't to be perfect. The goal is to be, you know, good enough. So these faces here, well, first of all, this face here on the back, both of them, those can, actually not both of them, this one here can be removed. And then also we could take these three faces, inset them, and then delete those. And that should be fine. So it's looking good. This little piece right here, I'm just going to, I don't know what the heck happened here. Let me delete out those faces. There we go, looks much better. Cool, so that's looking clean. We can go ahead and hide that piece, I think. Alright, these right here, we can go ahead and take these faces. Well, first of all, do we have a mirror modifier already? Looks like we do, but it's not doing anything, so let me just press L to delete those vertices there, and then we'll run the mirror modifier again. Cool. And then what I'll do is I'll inset these faces and then simply delete that out. And we're good to go. So let's go ahead and hide this piece. And also this face right here, we could probably inset. Actually, it's going to be a little bit tight, isn't it? Let's see if I can delete it completely. Will we see it? Yeah, we kind of will. I'm just going to leave that face alone, to be honest with you. These faces can all get deleted as well. There's actually some issues right there anyways, so can delete that. Maybe not completely, because if I do delete that, I can kind of see that deletion there. But what I could do is delete it and then just fill it again to avoid that weird issue we had before. And I'm just not going to inset it this time. It's just going to cause too much mayhem, so I'll leave that face there. Not a big deal. Also, this entire set of top faces here we're not going to see. So let's go ahead and inset those three so we can hold the bevel so that bevel doesn't get removed right there. Looks good. And then same exact thing for this little piece on the top. Let me dissolve out this middle edge and then simply inset these. And that looks good to me. Okay, looking good. I'm going to go ahead and hide this piece and hide, actually let's not hide this piece yet, we can still do a bit of work. So part of this face we can see and part of it we can't see. So what I'm going to do is just drop a loop cut and put it maybe right there. And I'm going to inset this face and then delete that one. And I could do the same thing over here, I guess. Put a loop cut there and then a loop cut like right here. And then do that. Looks good. Okay, so now we could probably hide that one. That one's done. I'm going to hide these two as well. Cool, so these bottom faces for both of these we can definitely inset. So I to inset and delete those faces. Looks good. I also noticed we could probably dissolve out some of these edges right here. Maybe not all of them, maybe just some. Not too worried about that right now though. Okay, so that one is looking good. So let me go ahead and I'm trying to think. There's a little bit below here we can't see, but I'm not sure if I want to bother myself with it. Might be a good idea because that's a pretty long stretch of faces we can't see. Now I can't drop a loop cut here because this is just a big n-gon, so a loop cut won't go through it. So what I could do is hop into the top view, turn on the knife cut, and then with box cutter I could simply go in and then maybe run a knife cut right there, and then run a knife cut over here. And then I can just take these faces and inset them until I can't see them anymore, and then delete it out. And that should save us additional space. Cool. I'm just going to hide those two. This face here on the bottom, I'm going to go ahead and inset completely and delete. And then also a little bit on the inside, it looks like there's some area on the inside we're never going to see. So I'm going to pull a loop cut in there, and then pull a loop cut in there. And then let's just take all these faces. We're not going to even see that bevel, so I can just remove all those faces completely. Yep, looks good. Okay, so that one's done. I'm going to go ahead and hide that. It's about as good as we're going to get. And we also have this little thing right here. I forgot about all these little pieces on top of each other, so I'm going to drop a loop there, drop a loop here, and then same idea for the inside. You can just take all those faces and delete those out. That should be good enough. And then also, will we see those faces on the bottom? No, we won't. So I can go ahead and go to these bottom faces, maybe just inset that and delete it and call it a day, and that should be fine. So we're going to hide that piece. And then for these two, pretty much the entire bottom portion can be removed because that one's covered. So what I'm going to do is just simply come into face mode and just kind of paint all these faces with the circle tool. Make sure you get everything. And then I'm just going to slightly inset that. Or honestly, maybe I could just delete out the whole thing. Might be less of a headache that way. Yeah, I'll just delete out the whole thing. And then same for this one. These pieces are so small you don't have to worry too much about them. Let me tab, turn off pass through. There we go. And then just kind of paint these as well. Delete those faces, and also these faces here can go away as well. We're not going to see those. Looking good. And then same for this piece over here. That one looks fantastic. Awesome. So I'm going to go ahead and hide this piece and this piece as well. Press Alt H to kind of preview everything. Looks like these faces here on the bottom we're not going to see. So I'm just going to do a quick, can't really inset those, it's getting a bit messy. So maybe I'll just delete those out completely. And yeah, that'll be fine, I think. As long as we can't see it. Now this face here on the top we can definitely inset and remove that. And this piece should be good enough. We're going to hide that. Now this face here we can just remove completely because the whole thing is kind of buried inside. And we're getting very close to the finish line, so this little thing right here, I'm going to go ahead and inset these faces and delete those. And then right here, same idea, inset these faces and then delete those. Looks the same. Cool. Also, we have a slight shading error right here. Let's merge these two vertices together. Looks like they're just a bit close. Cool. Now these connecting faces here, we're not going to see, so I'm just going to go ahead and we got to be careful with this inset. So before I inset that, we have a little bit of a mess in here. So let's just start by fixing this mess if we can. I have no clue what's going on here. Interesting. So you know what? I'm going to take those vertices and merge them. These vertices and merge those. And then we can take this one and merge that there. And then that one and merge that one there. Cool. And now let's try to inset this again because there's not as much tension. Much better. Do a little bit of an inset there. Delete. And then we can just kind of clean up this mess. Delete those faces and then delete that little strip of quads or whatever. And then also, we could take this portion and just kind of move it back a little bit closer. Let me just make sure I select everything. We could move that to about there because we're not going to really be able to see that far in. See what I mean? Cool, so let's go ahead and take these top faces here and set those and then delete. And then for this piece right here, we'll take all these faces and inset these and then delete those. And you're going to see everything looks exactly the same even though we've just optimized a lot of it. So let me also, actually I think this one's about as good as we're going to get it. So we can hide that piece and hide this piece. These two little caps, looks like we already have a mirror modifier, which is good. Can remove those faces. And then also for this piece, these faces right here can be insetted and deleted. So I to inset, X to delete faces, and also this little portion right here can get deleted out as well. So Alt H and then Control Z, everything looks good. Let me delete out, are we gonna see that face right there? I don't think so, so I can delete out that face as well. And then hide this piece. For these little screws here on the top, I'm just gonna remove the bottom faces. Very easy. And now we're just left with the easy part on this scope. So for this little ring piece, we're not gonna see these inside faces, so I'm just gonna inset them and then delete. And then what I could do is the same idea as before. We could put a loop cut here and then a loop cut here and delete out those faces. And also these faces right here we're not going to see because there's like a little lens on the inside. So I can hide that. I could also chop off like, you know, a good portion of this thing. So let me turn off the knife and then go in here. Control click on sharpen. And then just remove this face here. And that one is pretty well reduced. Okay, cool. So I'm going to go ahead and hide that piece. And also for this lens right here, we don't even need this first half. So I'm going to select this face, select more, and then just, you can press Control plus on the numpad as well. Just going to delete out half of that because like I said, we can't even see the other half. So we can hide that. This lens right here, can hide that face and these faces. And honestly, we could remove this entire portion here. So inset and then delete. Yep, looks good. So I'm gonna hide that. And then for this piece right here, let's just put a loop cut there. And then also, now we can just remove all these faces here. And we're not gonna see any sort of difference. Cool. All right, and now the last one here is to simply drop in a loop cut, right click, and then S, Y, and 0 to flatten it. And then we can just move the loop cut there. Could also put another one right here. delete these out. Delete that face out as well. Looks good. We can hide that. For this little ring, we can inset these faces and then delete them. And then for this lens right here, we can delete out half of that. And looks like we're good to go. So that is everything. Now there are probably a few little pieces and faces I missed here and there. It's pretty much impossible to be 100% accurate. There's always going to be something small you missed. But the idea is to have a nice balance of the time you're spending on this and also how well optimized your mesh is. And I think for what we did there, we did a pretty damn good job. So I'm going to right click on the low poly, visibility, show all inside. And then what we're going to do is just unwrap everything. So in the next video, we're just going to finish up the unwrapping process. It'll only be a few minutes, really easy at this point. So I'll see you in the next video. Alright, so in this video, we're just going to finish everything up. So just to recap what we've done, we marked all our seams on the model. We optimized the seams a bit more manually by removing seams and adding some seams that were missing. And then what we did is we optimized the mesh by basically deleting out faces and things like that we can't see. And now what we need to do is pretty much unwrap everything together onto one single UV grid. Okay, easy enough, right? So like I said, you don't have to worry about the size of the checkers until the very end. It doesn't matter. What matters is the final result once you're completely done. So right now I don't care how big or small these are. I'm not worried about it. So what I'm going to do is select everything in edit mode. So make sure everything's selected there. We're going to go into the UV editor and we're just going to press U, unwrap, and of course make sure it's set to conformal. Cool. So we're unwrapping that and you're going to see it's a pretty decent result, but this could definitely be packed a little bit more efficiently. Now I want to show you another cool trick that you can use. So, oops, I think box cutter enabled itself. Interesting. Okay, so take a look at some of these different circles here, right? So these could easily be straightened out into one rectangular shape. The analogy I give to people is imagine you have a hula hoop and you're trying to, pack the hula hoop into a suitcase. It's probably not going to fit. But if you cut the hula hoop and just made it into one long pipe, it would probably fit in there pretty well, right? Because it's more straight, rectangular. So that's the kind of analogy that I think makes sense, right? So what I like to do is take all these different circles here and make sure they're all straightened out for a better packing job. Now there's actually a free add-on that allows you to do this. I'll put it on the screen. It's called UV Squares. I think it's paid on Blender Market, but you can just go to GitHub and download it there. So I don't know what the difference is, but that's where I got mine. It's called UV Squares. It's very easy to use. What we do is we just go around. They have to make sure it's actually sets of quads. If they're not sets of quads, they will not straighten out. For example, if I try to go to, let's try to find one like this, for example. This is not a set of quads, although they probably could be if we connected those. So if I click on 2 grid by shape, make sure this is turned off here. If I click on 2 grid by shape, it only straightens out the ones with quads. So if you were to do this to one of the other ones, like this, for example, it would actually straighten out. So you have to make sure there's sets of quads, and that's one of the pros of retopologizing, is sometimes you'll be able to get more straight islands, but either way. As a matter of fact, what I do want to do is press the L key, because I could probably just press Control T, Alt J, which should basically, since these are, one-to-one consistency, that should connect them up very nicely. Then I could basically straighten those out. So my goal here really is to just press the L key on all these islands that are made up of quads. You want to be careful on the ones that have these wide effects on it. I'm going to leave those alone, but these more circular ones we can definitely go over to and just straighten all these out. And this is going to save a bit more space for us. So it does take some time and you don't have to be perfect with it. It's not that big of a deal, but it's going to save you a bit more space. So I'd really recommend doing it. I should probably do that one as well. So I'm just going to keep going around, pressing the L key. And some of these, the ones with these weird corners you want to be careful of. I mainly just go for the ones that are circles or semicircles. And you're going to see we already have some pretty weird looking islands, so I don't mess with those. But yeah, I mean, I wouldn't waste too much time on this. I would just grab what you can. This is a set of n-gons. I could probably turn that into quads, but there's quite a few things. So once these are straightened out into rectangles, there's going to be so much extra space left over, just because it'll be able to be packed a lot more efficiently. So I don't know what this thing is right here. I think we could probably straighten that one out. Okay, cool. So once you've gotten, a decent enough selection here, that should probably be fine. I'm going to turn this off, select everything with the A key, and go to UV squares and 2 grid by shape. And you're going to see everything basically straightened out very nicely. Sometimes you get these weird issues where it just kind of warps. So usually what I do is I undo it and then do it again, and it seems to work. I think it's a bug with the add-on, but either way, now when I run UV Packmaster or simply just use Blender's native packer, it's going to be a lot more compact. Now there's already a video on UV Packmaster. I think it's going to be after this one. So yeah, it's quite simple. This is all we really have to do. So let me give you a rundown now. If you want to watch the dedicated UV Packmaster video, you can go ahead and do that, but I'm going to show you everything you need in this video. So there's 2 different ways. You can use Blender's native packer, which is a lot worse, or you can use UV Packmaster, both of which I'm going to show you here. So right now, since we straightened out some of these islands, they begin to overlap and things like that. So basically what I want to do is go up here to UV, and the first thing we're going to do is tick on average island scale. What this will do is make sure the overall texel density is uniform, okay? So just make sure we do that. That means all the checkers are basically going to be the same size throughout the model. So I always do that first. After that, I go to the option for pack islands, which is right above it, and then we pack it. And you're going to see Blender does a pretty decent job. It's not terrible, but compared to UV Packmaster, which I want to show you here, it's just no comparison. So UV Packmaster 3 is actually out now. I'm still using 2, but the settings should basically be the same. First of all, what I like to do is go to advanced options and tick on normalize islands. That's basically the same thing as the average island scale. The next thing I like to do is, this is kind of optional, but let me show you. There is an option for heuristic, which basically, if you turn that on, it'll keep iterating over and over and over again until it gets the best possible solution. It's a little bit slower, requires more CPU power, but it's not too bad. And you can change the search time, I think. So I haven't really used this before, but I think if we set this to 10 seconds, after 10 seconds it'll stop, because usually any more than 10 or 20 seconds it's already found the best solution. So you can turn that on, set the search time, or maybe even the max wait time, doesn't really matter. And then you just click on pack. So you're gonna chill, wait for it to do its thing, and you're going to see it just keeps iterating over and over and over again, but it looks like it's found the best result, which is 0.668. And you're going to see this solution is a heck of a lot better than Blender's because there's significantly less empty space compared to before. But like I said, both solutions work. This is just the one I'd recommend. If you don't have UV Packmaster, I would simply recommend getting it as soon as possible. And you're going to see this is going to give us a very clean solution for the entire unwrap. Definitely looks good. And that's it, very easy solution, and since we removed all those extra faces that we were never going to see, we have a much more optimal result because it's not unwrapping faces that didn't need to be unwrapped anymore. It's only unwrapping the faces we can actually see. So that's why I'm so picky when it comes to optimizing your models, because you can save a lot of UV space this way. But that's it for this video. Like I said, there is a separate video on UV Packmaster, but I basically just showed you the same stuff in here. So if you want to watch that, I just put it in there as a reference video for you. So that's it. This is the completed model. Really easy, nice unwrap, and we're good to go. Alright, so in this quick video, I want to show you UV Packmaster. I'm going to show you the tools that you need. There's a lot of stuff you don't really need to use, so I'm not going to go over those. So UV Packmaster allows you to pack the islands as efficiently as possible. Best algorithm on the market, in my opinion. That's the only tool I use. So with UV Packmaster, what you can do, just click on it. And what I like to do is I first go here In normalize islands, this is basically the same option as average island scale. It makes sure the checkers are all the same size, so the resolution is the same size. So I always turn this on. And then what we can do is we can click on pack, and you're going to see this solution is so much better than what we had before. Look at how much more space is being used. What you can also do is use one of the heuristic algorithms, which basically goes over and over and over until it gets the best result. So I could click on this. It does take some time, but it's going to keep going until it finds the best result. And you're going to see this is just about as packed as we're possibly going to get it. There's going to be a point at which it's just not doing anything, or I guess maybe it is. This is probably about as good as it's going to get, but UV Packmaster says, I know this is good, but it's not good enough. It's basically like that one kid who like gets a 99% on a test, but has to get 100. So I guess that's a good thing for us because we don't have to do the work here. So we're just going to wait for it to finish its little algorithm here, and we're going to get a very, very clean result. And I think maybe it's just not going to stop. So I'm just going to click the escape button, and that should be fine. So you're going to see this is pretty much like as good as we're going to get. And the nice thing about UV Packmaster is it always gives us a nice little margin here to avoid texture bleeding. So you always want to have a little bit of a gap between each island. So as you can see here, there's very little gray area. The only gray area I see is like up here, and it's really not that big of a deal. So this is what I call a good pack. You're using as much space as possible, and there's very little gray space. Now the only thing I did notice is that the squares on this piece right here are a little bit smaller than these. And if that's still the case, then you probably just have some badly marked seams. So what I'm probably going to do is, instead of having a seam down the center here, I'm just going to go ahead and clear that seam, and then I'm just going to put a seam on this portion, mark that one, and then also put one over here and mark that one. I think that'll fix everything up for us. Sometimes just the seam placement, especially on these more rounded objects, aren't very good. So angle base would have been the best unwrap for this, but since we're unwrapping everything together with conformal, we don't really have that luxury. So that should kind of fix the issue and split it up a bit nicer. So once again, if you ever have to make any changes, you can just go back into UV Packmaster and just click on pack and just let it do its thing. Cool, so here's the result. This looks a lot better on that little grip here in the back. And you're gonna see this is an incredibly clean unwrap. All the checkers are the same size and everything is just nice and clean. No warping or distortions, just a really clean unwrap with a really nice packing solution.